Welcome, members of the Radical Wellness Breakthrough Group. I am so excited you're here, and we're going to talk about one of my favorite topics to talk about, and you'll understand why once I get all the way through this. We're going to talk about the big purple gorilla in your healing and your dis-ease, which is stress, chronic stress. Now, we don't talk about it enough, and we talk about it in ways that are disempowering. We talk about it in ways of like, stress is just part of life, or we're always going to have stress, or I can't do anything about stress, when in reality, there's a lot you can do about stress. And some of it is easy, and some of it's harder, and all of it is doable when you make it a priority. So if you've gotten to the point of autoimmune dis-ease or some other illness, then you've been in fight-flight chronic stress probably for a very long time, potentially your whole lifetime. In my case, I can measure it back to at least age 3. As I've gone through this healing process, there is a critical element of knowledge that you absolutely have to have in order to fully understand how this impacts you and why it is so important to prioritize the daily tasks, activities, habits, and methods. Make a monster difference in terms of wrestling this purple gorilla into a much calmer, happier, sweet little puppy dog. So let's dive right into it. Just give me a few minutes of your time and we're going to go through it. Please listen to the end because that's where I'm going to give you your tips for stress reduction. So first thing I want to tell you is that adrenal fatigue exists. All the way to the point of adrenal crash. I have seen it. I almost got there. But I have seen it steal people's lives because they ignored it for long periods of time, months, even years. Allopathic medical system doesn't even acknowledge adrenal fatigue because they don't have a treatment for it. They don't have a pill for it. They don't have a surgery. They don't have anything that they can do to help you. So they don't really teach doctors about it, and they don't teach them about it, whether it's in medical school or any of their follow-up education, which they're required to do. If they do, they gloss over it as potentially a psychological issue, a mental health issue, refer them to a psychologist, put them on antidepressants or antipsychotics. That is how they address it, which never solves the root of the issue. I even recently had a client message me because the doctor recommended, now she's had long-standing challenges which go back to her very early childhood that we've been working through, but they recommended that she actually have her adrenal gland removed, which I find it's hard for me to fathom the idea of removing your adrenal gland because it is such a critical part of living life, of feeling our way through the world that we live in. And so your adrenals are very important to you. They're a key critical component of life. And I'll explain some of that as well. So I'm very happy she didn't have her adrenal gland removed. And we've started on the solutions and gone down that path. The thing is, if they remove the organ, whether it's the adrenal glands, a gallbladder, a thyroid, a spleen, whatever, what they're basically doing is they're leaving the fire raging and just shutting off the fire alarm. The issue's still there. The root cause is still there. It still needs to be addressed. So where are the adrenal glands? The adrenal glands, if you take your hands and you put them on your waist on the back, they're roughly about right there, just above the waistline. And if you even press into that area, you might find it's tender or sore or tight. You may even find that you have back pain in that area. That's a sign of inflamed adrenals and kidneys. And that's because it's been going on for a little while. Or you had an extreme trauma, an extreme stressful event. So the adrenal glands are made up of two parts. They're just a little triangular gland, and they've got a cortex and a medulla. The cortex is what produces cortisol, and the medulla produces adrenaline, and they each produce more things. But this is really where we're going to focus, is the cortisol. The adrenal's purpose is to modify or adapt to the stressful experiences we have in life. So if you are, let's just say you're at work and you've got a project that has a tight deadline, you're going to be in stress and your body's going to be producing this cortisol. Ideally, the project is over and we calm down and we relax, and then we modulate that stress and excrete the excess cortisol, and we go back to a normal sort of even-keeled, calm state. That's not the case with most people, because we have projects at work, we have school functions for our kids, we have sports, we have houses to take care of, and the lawn needs mowed, and the bills need paid, and our parents need us, and society wants us, and then the news has all these headlines that are horror and drama and stress. We are always in your body's interpretation being chased by a bear, and your body doesn't know the difference between mental or physical stress. It doesn't know the difference between a bear and the cell phone ringing off the hook. Your body doesn't know the difference. It's all stress and trauma. Even the traumas that we call PTSD are chronic stresses that we couldn't deal with. And there's a lot of reasons why we can't deal with that. That's a whole nother conversation that is related, but not in this physiology conversation, is that the stress, when we are unable to process it, or unable to have the space to process it, or the tools or the knowledge to process it, gets pushed into the body, embedded in the body, and then it becomes physical symptoms. And then it's added physical stress on top of your mental, emotional stress. So the adrenal cortex emits cortisol, which is actually an anti-inflammatory, until we achieve a point when we hit cortisol resistance, because we've got so much cortisol in the system. And then we can't regulate inflammation. And then inflammation becomes a bigger part of what we're dealing with. And you've probably seen the commercials, such and such dis-ease is related to inflammation in your body. They're saying all dis-ease is related to inflammation in your body. I always ask an additional why. Why is the body inflamed? Well, there's lots of reasons why the body's inflamed, and stress is a big chunk of that. So over time, the body continues to communicate this modifying factor of cortisol to stress adapt, and it does so through the vagus nerve. So the vagus nerve is the biggest nerve in the body. It's about the size of your pinky. It runs from the midbrain to the genitals, and it has nerve communication out to every part of your body. If you look up a vagus nerve body chart or vagus nerve chart, what you'll see is it impacts the eyes, the mouth, the speech, the lungs, the heart, the limbs, the digestion, the immune system. It impacts every system in your body. Because certain things don't need to be turned on when you're being chased by a bear. You don't need to digest food, and you don't need to reproduce. In other words, you don't need to make babies when you're under stress. So it has an impact on reproduction. It has an impact on digestion, on our immune system. Those are the three big places, as well as the inflammatory system, which immune system and inflammatory system are closely linked and related. So the vagus nerve in stress will take energy away from specific systems in order to prioritize others. So again, your body doesn't know the difference between mental stress and being chased by a bear. It just knows you need to run. So it will shunt energy. So it'll push energy out to your hands and your limbs. It will also then push heart rate up, breathing shallow, because you got to get more oxygen in so you can burn off the glucose in your muscles so you can run really fast for a long period of time. The challenges, and we'll walk through some of the challenges that come with that, is that we don't shut it off because it doesn't have an off switch. It only has an on switch. So we don't ever shut it off. Again, because we don't know how to, but you're going to know how to shortly. The not shutting it off means that it goes 24/7. That we don't metabolize that excess cortisol. We don't metabolize all of the excess hormones that are burned up in that process. And we don't do things like make vitamin D or make progesterone or testosterone in the ways that we should. So Mental processing can also be impacted. I mentioned the vagus nerve goes up into the midbrain. So mental processing, when you're being chased by a bear, you're only in survival mode. The idea of thinking logically and problem solving and things like that, it just doesn't function very well. You can adapt to that in certain situations, but usually that doesn't last very long, and it depletes your mental processes. So you lose memory, as an example. Access to short-term and long-term memory. Now, you may know what this feels like if you've had an anxiety or a panic attack, and you feel like your heart's dun, 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 or it's skipping. You can feel all this like tingling sensation in your hands and your arms. Maybe you're getting a little neuropathy because there's been so much injected into the hands and feet for so long that the nerves are actually being kind of burned up a little bit. They can only handle so much of this. They're not designed to handle chronic long-term stress. In an ideal situation, we have this stressful event. Our body does exactly what it's meant to do, and then we come out of it and we turn that process off and we relax and we process through what we experienced, and we expel the emotions and the energies, and everything's fine, right? But really, we don't do that. We don't allow the body to go through the process. If you've ever seen an animal that's been in trauma, they'll often lay down on the ground, they will pant, and they will shake. Their body is processing that experience. Now, if we lay on the ground and we shake, or we pant and work our way through it, often we're given a sedative, or, they think, oh my gosh, this person's having a panic attack, let's calm them down. We calm them down artificially, with a chemical medication, rather than actually calming their whole nervous system down and allowing that process to happen. The shaking, the verbal outbursts, the breath work, etc. So in that suppression, what we've done is we've taken all the energy of that trauma, which was trying to come out, and we shoved it right back down in our bodies. And it accumulates and it piles up and it gets bigger. It's like putting a cat in a box. Cats don't like to be in a box. So they'll claw their way out. And it comes out in super unhealthy ways. It'll come out in outbursts with other people. It'll come out in screaming at people in traffic. It'll come out in potentially physical outbursts like punching the wall. It can come out in addictions, numbing activities, whether it's food or alcohol or drugs, over exercising, binge watching Netflix, not moving for a weekend, etc. Now, for most of us in modern society, this represents every single day. And I have ways to teach you to process through this. But and some of those are going to be in here, and more in another video. But today we're going to talk on that physical response. The fight, flight, freeze, fawn response is your system's response to the adaptation of survival. And if you look at what they call the spectrum, the autism spectrum, it is an expression of fight to fawn, fight to freeze response, really. So we could connect that back to an extreme stressor and a vagus nerve response. Now, under chronic stress and major trauma, including surgeries and accidents, these create situations where the adrenals struggle to keep up. It's like putting your adrenal glands shoveling coal 24/7. Eventually, they're going to get tired. Over time, you can develop that resistance. So what happens when you've developed this resistance and now your body can't adapt to stress? Your tolerance to stress is lowered. You're triggered much more easily. You're on your last nerve. If a person cuts you off in traffic, you start screaming at them. Maybe you get aggressive and you drive up on them and you tailgate them and things like that. You've seen videos of this. These are people that are stressed to the point where their adaptive stress response is in control of them. They are no longer in control of themselves. You are impatient and irritable. You're anxious. It can lead to, there's a lot of excessive thinking, ruminating, going over situations in your head over and over again, running through the same scenario, right? In this process, actually, what you end up doing is, because the body needs glucose to run from a bear, the body will convert anything you eat, including protein, into glucose, which converts to sugar in the body, which burns off very quickly. But the problem is, the body can only handle so much sugar. And what does the body do from 1 to 3 a.m.? The liver processes sugar and dumps it into your system, and we tend to be awake during that time period. Now, when the liver is constantly running on sugar, because craving sugar is also part of adrenal stress, when your liver is constantly running on sugar, we end up with fatty liver, sugar in the bloodstream, diabetes. We deal with unfriendly cholesterols, fat on the liver, fat in the organs, that visceral fat in between the organs, which is the dangerous one. And this isn't about being overweight. Thin people can have this visceral organ fat as well. And eventually it becomes like this spare tire, because one of the things the body does in order to protect the adrenals is it'll actually pull protein out of the gluteus maximus, which is your big butt muscle, and it will put it up on the midsection. Okay. It'll also pull it out of the legs and your muscles. So your legs get weaker, the gluteus maximus gets weaker, you have trouble standing up, bending over, things sometimes get very tight and dry and sore and hot. And then you get that spare tire around the midsection. And I have seen people that, they look thin, and then you hit that midsection and they've got the spare tire around it. So I know that they are in chronic stress, fight, flight. Hyperacidity, gastritis, ulcers. People say, well, stress ulcers. That's usually predicated by something like H. pylori or an E. coli infection that was not dealt with properly. And so it has reduced the mucosal lining of the digestion and increased the potential for you to have acid exposure to the very sensitive tissues of the stomach and the digestive system. Well, we end up with a hyperacidity when we've got too much stress, which can lead to acid issues. However, here's the asterisk on the end of that. Over long periods of time, the body runs out of the fuel it takes to make stomach acid, and you end up with low stomach acid. And then you can't digest your food, bloating, feels like it sits. A lot of people say, well, I can't eat beef anymore, or I can't eat meat anymore. It's because you've got low stomach acid. And really, by that point in time, they're probably having breathing issues because they're so low on potassium that really they can't even get a long, deep breath. Long-term chronic stress, internal and external stress, depletes nutrients that we need for relaxation and body function. So potassium, I mentioned, for breathing and oxygenation. And really, this is as much about getting it to the fascia, which are ligaments, tendons, and muscles. And this envelope that wraps all of them together and kind of holds them in a package, it gets dried out. It gets sore and tight. This is what we call fibromyalgia. Magnesium, which is needed for relaxation, for balancing calcium in the body, and also magnesium is needed for 500 enzymatic processes in the body. So you need your magnesium. Vitamin C, which supports the immune system, is an antioxidant. B vitamins are burned up when you're in stress. This helps with relaxation, mood, and energy. And these just to name a few. Magnesium or minerals are depleted, iodine is depleted, lots of things are depleted in this process. Now, cortisol steals the nutrients to build key hormones like vitamin D, which is actually a hormone, not a vitamin, progesterone, testosterone, and others, because it competes for pregnenolone, which is a building block hormone for your reproductive hormones like estrogens, progesterone, and testosterone. The increased inflammation is the body's healing response to an injury, but without the cortisol to reduce the inflammation, or without enough vitamin C to reduce the inflammation builds up. The nature of the energy of nutrient movement away from the immune system means the body can move into an overreactive inflammatory response. We know that as autoimmune disease. Many people, their symptoms start after a major event or a stressor. Now, pain is a result of, among other things, this hyperacid or hyperalkaline state, which depends on how long you've been in stress, and the weakening of the fascia due to cortisol, steel, and movement to reinforce other critical functions. Now, remember I mentioned that when you're in fight flight, the body thinks it needs to run from a bear. So it's constantly pushing nutrients and fuel and energy out to your limbs. Well, eventually the fascia of this system, which are these are the like when you're moving ligaments, tendons, and fascia around the muscles, because the muscles themselves don't move. They're innervation sinews, but they don't actually make the movement. So when you have that situation, then eventually they get tight and dry and painful. It also looks like weakened thigh muscles, weakened butt muscles, softening of this midsection. As the vagus nerve runs the midbrain, memory becomes a challenge. I know when I was in my highest state of stress, I couldn't remember anything anybody told me. If I didn't write it down, I was not going to remember it. I could walk out of a meeting and not even tell you what the topic of the meeting was. With cortisol flip, we experience a disturbance in the circadian rhythm, which is our sleep rhythm. So we end up with what they call cortisol flip. So cortisol should drop off throughout the afternoon. And in its place, we start to produce melatonin, which increases our sleepiness. But when cortisol's up, remember, it doesn't have an off switch. If we don't intentionally turn it off, then it's going to keep going and you won't have that drop off and you won't be producing the melatonin. Now, some people try to take melatonin, which works briefly, but it actually doesn't solve the issue. And it has an impact on brain detox. Like taking it externally does not allow for the brain detox that should happen when you're sleeping. Now, here's the thing though, it's when you're exhausted and you lay down and your brain starts revving and you run through the to-do list and everything that happened today and you run through scenarios and start arguing with people in your brain and you try to solve all these issues. You're exhausted, but you can't sleep because that cortisol is still up here. It's still revving in your system. Now, the body produces or processes toxins between 1 and 3 a.m. through the liver. And at 3 a.m. or somewhere in the middle of that, the body will choose to dump the sugars out of the liver into the digestive system. Well, and the kidneys. And if it's overloaded, then the dump happens ultimately back into the bloodstream. And this is when many people wake up and they crave. Now, the cortisol flip means, too, that your best sleep is like 4 a.m. to 9 a.m. And when you should be getting up and like going to work or getting your day started. So we think coffee is the solution. But what coffee does is artificially rev up our adrenaline. But then it drops back off again because of the histones in the body. So if you've got this situation, this is a sign that cortisol has been running a long time and imbalance has also been going for a long time. And the recommendations I have later in here are going to be even more beneficial for you. With long-term stress, we often experience extreme breathlessness. So you can't go up a flight of stairs and you've lost your breath. That is related to, among other things, the potassium. And think about it. I said that when you're in this chased by a bear situation, there's all this energy coming in the lungs and you're breathing really fast because you got to run faster, you got to run longer, have endurance. But we end up in that state. And when your body reads what's going on in your system and you're still breathing up here in your chest and your shoulders, your body thinks, oh my God, the bear's still here. We've got to do more. And so another flush of cortisol comes through. And so you're in that cycle. Now, toxicity is a byproduct of this because during the time when we should be resting and sleeping and repairing, we are up and going and rewriting the days of our lives, right? We're reenacting all the situations. We cannot move into a state where the body can detoxify and rest and repair. And so these toxins accumulate in your system. And when the body should be processing toxins through the liver, it's processing sugar through the liver. Okay. We just don't recover from the day. So we don't have that reset cycle, that rest cycle, and then we get extreme fatigue. My fatigue was so extreme, I would fall asleep at a stoplight. The one that was really the scariest was I fell asleep at a stoplight, and it took a semi-truck horn to wake me up, and I had slept through at least 2 lights at that point in time. So my body just went off, and I was sitting in a car with my foot on the brake. If I'd have relaxed enough, taken my foot off the brake, I would have gone right into the intersection. So thank goodness that didn't happen. All right, so tests for cortisol. Tests for this situation of cortisol flip, excess cortisol, etc. may give you a picture of what's going on. Now, if you test at like one moment during the day, whether it's a morning appointment or an afternoon appointment, you're only getting a snapshot of what's going on. Because, as I mentioned, the body has a clock, a circadian rhythm. You can look up Chinese body clock. It'll give you a little more information about that. It's pretty fascinating information. So you will test for a situation at a moment in time, and it will not give you the full picture of what's going on. There is what they call 24-hour saliva test you can take, which you can do that. It's on the expensive side. And you have to test multiple times throughout the day. Totally doable, and an option if you want to do that. There are other tests that are really quite good if your budget allows it. But here's a free test that you can do. So here's one test, and you may already know the answer to this one. I know I did when I heard it. Is when you stand up quickly, do you get a head rush? Do you feel dizzy? Do you need to fall back, or like almost fall backwards? Sitting down again? Your adrenals are unable to adapt to that quick movement anymore. There just isn't enough fuel left. Another test is a blood pressure test. So if you get a blood pressure cuff, so you have to buy a blood pressure cuff, you can buy a digital one, and you laying down, you put that cuff on and you measure, and you're really looking for the systolic, that top number. You measure, just write that number down. Let's just say it's 120. And then you stand up and you measure it again. It should go up 6 to 10 points. So you should go up to like 126, 127, something like that. If you go up and it either goes up way more than that, then you know your adrenals are in high rev. If it drops off, like it tanks, you know the adrenals haven't adapted to that change of you laying down to you standing up. So it's the measurement version of that stand up and get dizzy. And you may get dizzy as well. And here's another CO2 tolerance test. We lose our tolerance to CO2 because we're in a hyperoxygen state. When we're like this, you know, like you're constantly breathing. So here's a breath test. So breathe in and out through your nose 3 times. Okay, now on the 4th one, what I want you to do is breathe in as far as you can and let it out as slow as you can. And count while you're letting out. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you want to let it out as slow as you can. Now, if your count of letting it out completely is between 0 and 20, you are intolerant to CO2, and that is another sign of where your body's at in this stress state. If you're between 20 and 40 seconds, pretty average. 40 to 80 seconds, you're an athlete. 80 and above, you're an elite athlete. So try that test. Breathe in, normal rate. Now breathe in and hold. Breathe in. And breathe out slow. And count. This is one you can use to practice and measure and modify how your body's responding, because you'll find when you do that, you actually begin to calm down. All right. So let's get to some of the solutions that I have for you. So we need to turn off the adrenals. We just need to tell them we're safe. It's good. You don't need to be shoveling coal anymore. Everything's fine. And you can do this anytime during the day. When I first started doing this, I would do it all the time. I would be sitting in a meeting and they would start, arguing, because I worked in a very high stress environment. They'd start arguing amongst themselves and I would sit and just breathe. I would go in my office and shut the door and I would breathe. I'd go to take a bathroom break and I would breathe. But the breathing here's the technique, right? So first I want you to measure your breathing. I want you to pay attention. Just take a couple of breaths in and I want you to tell me if you only move your shoulders and sort of the upper part of your body, or if you actually get all the way down to your belly button, because your lungs go almost to your belly button, right? So you're going to breathe in deeply with your nose and let it out slowly, as long and slow as you can. Then you're going to breathe in again deeply through your nose. Now, are you breathing in your shoulders or are you breathing in your belly? If you're not breathing all the way down to your belly, take your 2 hands and put them over your belly button. And your focus, your practice to start with, is just to get your belly to expand when you breathe in. That should be the first place of expansion. And it could take you 10 tries. It could take you 100 tries. This is, again, a measure of how high is your stress. Once you get to the point where you're breathing and pushing out your belly button, then your exhale is to push the belly back in, because if you think about it, we're going to breathe air into the lungs all the way to the bottom, and then we're going to push it out from the bottom to the top. And that's important. That's an important part of this detoxification process. So practice breathing in through your nose, expanding your belly. Then you lift your chest. Then you deplete the belly of the air. And then you reduce the chest from there. Do that as long as you need to. And pay attention to how your body feels. So measure your body at the beginning. Measure your stress and your tension and your tightness and how you feel, and kind of pay attention to your body. Do 3 breaths in like that, and then measure your tension and your tightness again, and do 3 more breaths. That's a great one. Okay. If deep breathing is an issue, remember I mentioned potassium. You might go get what they call bioplasma cell salts. Hylands, Hylands, is a company that makes them. And they also have a potassium, just a potassium granule. Put it under your tongue. Great source of potassium. Carrots and bananas are 2 good sources of potassium as well. All right, next. Now we're going to do a 4-7-8 breath. So with a 4-7-8 breath, you're going to breathe in for 4, you're going to hold for 7, you're going to breathe out for 8. Now, if you can't do the full 7 and 8 portion of this at first, that's okay. Keep practicing it. You will get to that point. So you breathe in for 4, hold for 8, out for 7. Okay? So that's another great breath. The other one that I love to teach people is what I call a box breath. So like you're drawing a box, you're going to breathe in for 3, you're going to hold for 3, you're going to breathe out for 3, and you're going to hold for 3. And then you're going to draw the next box of 4. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. And then you go to 5 and 6. I prefer, especially when you get started, if you go to 7 and then from 7 back to 3. Okay? So try the box breathing. Also a great way to relax, and you can do it in a meeting. Everybody's screaming and yelling, having a fit about the boss is yelling at you, and you're like, and you will find that rather than react by yelling back, you're going to respond in a much more calm manner. So that is awesome stuff. Nasal speed breathing. This one also, because it actually resets the nervous system, is a great one to come out of that chronic stress. Just breathing through your nose, close your mouth, and breathe fast through your nose. I always do a deep breath at the end. You can do 3 rounds of 10, 10 rounds of 10. You might get dizzy at first, but that's okay. This is all about resetting the oxygen-carbon dioxide balance in your body. Okay, Qigong bouncing. So with Qigong bouncing, you are standing, feet about hip width apart, and you're just bouncing. And you focus on relaxing and letting the body relax. And let the body just bounce out stress and move in relaxation. You can look it up online if you need to. EFT tapping, another thing to look up. And you don't have to be speaking anything. You'll see a lot of people have a mantra or something you say. I don't necessarily think you need to say anything. You just need to activate the meridian pathways of the body so that it calms down. Okay? Love EFT tapping. And again, you can do that anywhere. Sitting at a stoplight, you can be like, just tap for a minute. Right? Let me just calm my system down. Okay? That's a short version of it. Check it out. I have an energy and vitality morning routine that I like to do. I do a 4-7-8 breath. I do a nasal speed breathing. I do dragon breath and Qigong bouncing. And then I also do body drumming, which I will be recording a video of me doing that here shortly. Make sure you schedule unplug and rest periods. No stimulation, no television, no social media, no cell phone, unless you're playing non-vocal music, so very calming, whether it's Zen music or pan drum or classical music, something that is not mentally stimulating. There is a huge body of knowledge and science about sound as a therapy. And it's amazing, like 174 hertz, 396 hertz. You can go onto YouTube, you can buy CDs, you can go onto websites, find a lot of that kind of thing available and have it in your environment. Listening through headphones is amazing. It's super helpful. But if you can't, like you're just kind of picking up your bedroom and doing some light chores around the house, maybe play something in the background. Right? If you're doing a little bit of reading or you're in your relaxation state. It's a great thing to teach your kids as well. Because if you don't teach it to them, they won't learn it from somewhere else most likely. But no stimulation is important. No television, no news, no movies, shoot 'em up, explosions. Those are all stimulating your nervous system and your fight-flight response. If household chores are a stressor for you, I had a client who, oh my gosh, she had to have the house 100% neat as a pin, picked up before she went to bed, and it stressed her out so badly. In addition to working 2 jobs and having teenage kids and a husband that worked full-time, it stressed her out so badly she had a full breakdown, full adrenal breakdown, and was out of work for months, out of commission for months. So hire some help with your household chores. If you can't hire help, ask for help. And this is coming from someone who did not ask for help. I'm saying to you, you need to ask for help. It will make a monster of a difference. Okay? Spontaneous, unplanned, unscripted movement helps release stress. I teach embodiment. That's the nature of embodiment. But sometimes just turn on some music and start moving. And you're not trying out for dance. It doesn't have to look like anything. Just get your body moving. It's going to release stress. And I don't mean headbanging music. I'm, again, talking about piano or pan drumming or something along those lines. All right, let's talk supplements. I mentioned that stress depletes a lot in the body. So here's some supplements. Start your day with 1 cup of warm water with a couple of pinches of sea salt. Celtic salt, Baja Gold, pink sea salt, with 1 squeeze of fresh lemon juice. You're not going to believe how it actually gets your energy level up and it wakes you up better than any cup of coffee. Now, an hour after you do this, you're welcome to have a good cup of coffee. When I say good, I'm talking like organic, fair trade, small roaster, not Maxwell House covered with fungus. That's a whole nother discussion. But there's a lot of mold and fungus on most coffee. So you got to find a small local roaster, local company that roasts coffee, and get some of their organic fair trade. And then there are some brewing methods that make a difference. This isn't a conversation about coffee. It has its benefits, but it should not be how you start your day. 4,000 milligrams of vitamin C daily. Now this is an acerola cherry camu Those are two high vitamin C fruits that they extract vitamin C from, not ascorbic acid. It doesn't do the job, especially when you're in adrenal fatigue. It does not do the job. And why do I say 4,000 milligrams? You have to fill the bucket back up again. And you're going to find that it reduces your inflammation. You feel better. Your immune system works a little bit better. Your kidneys are nourished again. So definitely vitamin C, up to what they call bowel tolerance. So as it loosens up your bowels, then you might back off a smidge. But I can tell you that if you're in adrenal fatigue, you're going to want this 4,000 milligrams. If you choose spinach as a vitamin C and mineral source, you have to make sure you get it fresh within 1 to 2 days of picking, because by the time you get a week out from picking, the vitamin C is gone. Magnesium. I like it in a liquid biglycinate form from a company called Nutrimetrics. The link is available through me. Send me a message and I'll send you the link. 2 doses before bedtime. And the more depleted you are, you may want to do 2 doses in the morning. It's going to help reduce your stress throughout the day. Vitamin D3. The best way to do this is to get out and get 15 minutes of sun exposure first thing in the morning. You need to get the sun in your eyes. You need to get it on your arms, even on your torso, upper chest, that sort of thing. It will make a difference. Your body will begin to produce the hormone that we call vitamin D, which is a great anti-inflammatory. You can supplement with it, and my preferred supplement is, again, a Nutrimetrics vitamin D3 with K2. Incredible stuff. B vitamins. You burn out Bs when you're in stress. So you want a methylated B vitamin. Nutrimetrics has an incredible formula. And you can take all 3 of those together if you want. B vitamins tend to improve energy. So you may want to focus those in the daytime. But if you're so depleted of Bs that you're not sleeping well, you may also find it beneficial to take like an hour before bedtime with some magnesium and some vitamin C. And I bet you're going to sleep great over time. With breath work. We're going to talk about that too. That breath work we talked about is good to do in the morning and at night at minimum. Because if you're doing it at night, you're going to calm your nervous system, shut off the racing brain. You're going to shut off the adrenals, shut off the cortisol so the body can calm down, relax, rest, and repair. It may or may not happen in a couple of days. It might take a few months. And you can do it. I know you can. Make this a priority and you're going to see the incredible breakthroughs. Cultured fermented foods. Sauerkraut, kimchi. I make an awesome non-spicy kimchi. If you want that recipe, message me and I'll give you that recipe. Lemons, limes, and blueberries. The fresher, the better. Potassium, cell salts, bananas, and celery juice. Calcium in fresh picked greens and carrots. You get more calcium from spinach, fresh picked spinach, or almonds than you will ever get from cow's milk. Sea salt to hydrate the cells and provide filtering material for the kidneys. Another option is a hydration supplement called LMNT. Excellent for dehydration. Which dehydration is very, very, very common. It's not about how much water you drink. It's about the mineral content combined with the water. Critically important. The body's electrical. And the whole idea of hydration is to allow the electricity to conduct through the water. But without minerals, it doesn't do that. Skullcap. This is one of my favorite herbs. It actually helps your body to extract the cortisol out of the nervous system and off the receptor sites. We talked about the cortisol resistance. You got to clean them up. It will actually help remove all that out of your system, and it will calm you down without making you sleepy. I love skullcap, and I always take it after lunch. Always take it after lunch. It's the best time. I get the best sleep, and I'm becoming a morning person because I'm taking it, which is unheard of, because I could sleep in the mornings. Bacopa, which will help restoration of memory. Donna Eden, you'll look her up online. She's amazing. She has a daily energy routine that is incredible for restoring the energy flow through the body, for getting this sort of shorted out, crazy, off the charts nervous system to flow again. Exercise, HIIT training is the only exercise that, besides walking and light hiking and stuff, HIIT training is the only exercise I recommend for people with adrenal fatigue, because you do 1 minute of intense exercise and 2 minutes of rest. And what you're going to do is actually retrain your body to go stress, relaxation, stress, relaxation, stress, relaxation. You will retrain your body through HIIT training, and you're going to restore those muscles, ligaments, tendons that have been depleted by all that cortisol. Forest bathing. Go out in the woods. Go out and just be in the green. It's so beautiful. Saunas and cold plunge tanks. A cold plunge will reset your nervous system. It's incredible what it will do. It's not easy to do. And I actually found that I had a better response by the nature of how I'm built, because I'm adrenally, I'm a stress type A kind of personality, is if I would go sit in the sauna for 45 minutes and then go cold plunge or cool plunge in my soaker tub, oh my gosh, I felt so good, and I would sleep so good. Oh, it was so good. So you might try that as well. How long? 3 months plus 1 month for every year you've had symptoms. So I've worked with clients who've been anxious since they were 10 years old. So you're looking at however many years plus 3 months of this program. All right, so just to recap, breath work, get some rest and downtime. You need to work on the mindset and the reasons why we stress. That's another set of exercises. Get your supplements in, your vitamin C, magnesium, your sunshine, your B vitamins, and your fermented foods. Take care of yourself. You are an absolute priority, because there's no way you can take care of those you love if you're not filled up and chill. Take it from personal experience, because I am a product of this product, and I firmly believe in it. If you want anything, I'm going to put the links to supplementation in the community conversation board. But if you can't seem to find it, let me know, and I'll be happy to send it to you. All right, my friends. I wish you many calm days.